Hi everyone, I'm Ileana Fenwick. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you to the Marine Mammal Group for giving such an excellent primer for diving into the Openscapes mindset. I wanted to start by just introducing myself a little bit and my role here on the Openscapes team. So as I mentioned, I'm Ileana. I'm a I'm an Openscapes team member, and I'm the lead for our Pathways to Open Science initiative. A little bit about the other hats that I wear in addition to being on the Openscapes team. I'm also a graduate student, so I'm a National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellow, and I'm also a member of a Quantitative Fisheries Ecology Lab at UNC Chapel Hill, all of which kind of culminated in bringing me here to learning more about Openscapes, which I'll talk about in just a moment. To think about and frame a little bit my role in the Openscapes team and what drew me so much to this mission and this group is that Openscapes is really committed to creating a more equitable and sustainable future in our field. And so my role as the lead of the Pathways to Open Science program and as a member of the team has really been to center inclusion and equity and bringing open science skills to specifically audiences who have been historically excluded or systemically excluded from engaging in data science and topics like this one. And again, a little bit more about myself as a researcher. I love studying marine communities. I'm really interested in how we can quantify them more effectively and how they're changing, specifically as it relates to recovery and resilience to disturbances. And so that's the work that I do within my dissertation. And lastly, I'm a member of the open science community. I started by learning R, and I was community taught, not traditionally in a classroom. I spent a lot of time on tutorials and learning and chugging away kind of self-paced. And so I'm really excited to now sit here as a member of the open science community, learning and teaching and instructing with you all as we kind of navigate this together. I'm just gonna click because I see the chat. Okay, awesome. Just taking a look there. And I want to talk a little bit about how open science really changed the way that I do my work. We got introduced to this beautiful landscape by Julie a little bit earlier, and we see that there's this, incredible open science place and land ahead of us from this welcome point where we all are now. But the reality was when I started grad school, I was very much this little bunny in the corner. I felt very isolated, and I felt that data science was a tool, not a community. And it was a tool that I didn't feel like I was using very well. And so I felt really isolated, very alone. And I was processing big data and I wasn't really sure where to turn. And all of that really shifted when I participated in the Openscapes Champions program. And so to do a little bit of show and tell of what that journey looked like for me, this is a real screenshot from my computer where I had 6 different versions of the same file saved with just the hope that number 6 was the last one. And like, I wasn't sure what was actually the final file. And so I related to, the mammal holding the final version, and no, this one is the final version. I think all of us can relate to having way too many versions of files that exist on our computer. And so all of that to say, I had a very disjointed workflow, and what frustrated me the most was that it felt like I was losing so much time. I possibly was losing data. I lost data. And I was just really frustrated and feeling like I didn't have a community to turn to or really didn't know what tools were available to me. And so all of that shifted rather drastically when I participated for the first time in Openscapes community programming. And so in 2021, my lab group had the opportunity to be a part of the Open Call group that participated in the Champions program. And so all of a sudden, I was introduced to community and I was introduced to instruction. And so going from a space where I was hyper isolated in my data science work to really understanding that data science is a community that I'm a part of and that I can contribute to, I really, credit to Openscapes and being able to participate in the Champions program. And so in addition to building community around open science, I also learned about tooling and ways that I can improve my workflow. We've heard a lot about GitHub today. You'll hear even more about it as we progress through this series. And that was one of many tools that I learned that has really radically changed the way that I'm doing my work. And so a little bit of how it's going. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Pathways to Open Science program in the next slide, but I'm now the lead of that program and really focus on amplifying the power of open science in the work that I'm doing. And Julie and I, if you've been keeping up with some Openscapes news, we just had the chance to go to the White House and talk about open science and be a part of this celebration of the Year of Open Science, and all of which feels so crazy to me, having just participated and just learned about open science in 2021. And so the person who started with these many files on her computer, wouldn't have dreamed of this being the case. But I'm really excited to be able to share that. And I share it as a testament to how far your open science journey can go when we embrace this open science mindset. And so next I wanted to talk briefly about the Pathways to Open Science program. This is an annual program that exists virtually for Black researchers and students from historically Black colleges and universities, HBCUs, of which I am an alumni. I attended Hampton University in Virginia. And the goal of this program is to really create visibility, representation, and community around data-intensive science for a group that, largely this community was lacking, and to provide representation in that. And so if you're sitting here and you're thinking of how can I support the Pathways to Open Science program, I ask that you amplify our work and share this with your colleagues and your students and your researchers that you work with, so that we can continue this work and really bring and fold more people into this community. And I want to also say that building community and establishing new ways for people to join in on our open science mission more broadly is really a manifestation of the Openscapes mindset. And the work that each of us is doing every single day can create a kinder future for new pathways in scientific progress and also in our community building as well. And so with that, we're going to jump into exploring the principles of the Openscapes mindset. The first of which is to reframe your work as a collaborative effort. And we've heard it already, and I'll say it again. You are not alone. It is not too late for you to learn. And no matter where you're starting from, your experience is valid, and your questions bring us all closer to creating better results. And so this principle really centers our shift from an individual to embracing learning at whatever stage with less shame. And as an individual, this shift is happening in our minds, but we can also stand by these principles in groups. And so it's important to establish community and trust and collaboration to bring this mindset to the groups that you're a part of. And so the next principle is to redefine collaborators. And I think you've kind of heard this as well, is that we're really all united by a common thread of needing to manage our data, to analyze our data, and to communicate around our data. And so when we center those challenges, rather than the specifics that place us all into different boxes, this means that your collaborators can be anyone. And so whether it's a colleague in a different agency or an internet stranger with a similar question in mind, the work that we do and the tools that we develop and learn will transcend any one particular data set. And we can release ourselves from believing our work or documentation is only valuable to a small subset of people. And so when we design our workflows with transparency and reproducibility in mind, there is an infinite amount of use for our projects beyond any one cycle. And the next is to reimagine challenges. So using the mantra of recycling, one that we're all familiar with under this climate, marine, environmental umbrella, being able to reduce, reuse, and recycle. And specifically, we encourage reuse and not reinvention. And the reason for that is because reinvention can be very isolating. Already we're blazing, the trailhead. It might be isolating to be leading the way, but it's also very isolating and can be a burdensome place when there is likely a better way. And so expecting a better way means asking for help sooner and being able to progress faster and more confidently. And also the likelihood that you may encounter such a novel issue that no one would benefit from your question or no one would benefit from your documentation of your workflow is really next to zero. And so whether it's for future you in 6 months coming back to your code or coming back to a project, or a collaborator who's trying to reproduce your work, everyone really benefits from the reuse of challenge solutions. And the last point is open as a daily practice. Open science is a lifestyle, or at least that's how I consider it. And this mindset can and should show up in all the aspects of your work. So whether you're working with code daily or you do not touch it at all, the Openscapes mindset is really a shift towards empathy, towards sharing, towards learning together. And while you've heard plenty today, and in a perfect world, you could flip the switch tomorrow and everyone have this exact same mindset, the reality is that this shift is going to take time and it's going to take trust. And so we focus a lot on this principle of slowing down to speed up. And it's a powerful reality of this work, specifically because we want to emphasize learning and teaching together and validating everyone, regardless of where they're coming from. And that will be crucial for building this Openscapes mindset in your communities as well. And so the next part is that open data science is a beautiful feedback loop. We see it here visualized really nicely. And so here, open science is defined by the tooling and the people enabling reproducible, transparent, and inclusive practices for data-intensive science. And so when we use similar tools as a team in this tooling piece, it can promote collaboration and it streamlines our teamwork. And then here we see the loop turn, and the teamwork then gives us the confidence and the community to learn even more new tools. And so this creates an opportunity to keep the tooling and the learning going while building community and while building our teams even more deeply. And so to think about that feedback loop in action, one great example of it is GitHub. And again, if you're sitting here and you haven't wrapped your head around GitHub just yet, there will be more opportunities to learn and to think and to ask all your questions about GitHub as we progress through this series. But GitHub as a tool gives us this collaborative version control and the ability to store and to annotate and to search in our work. And I am just gonna check. Okay, perfect. It looked like my screen stopped sharing on my end, but it looks good. And so to share our work. And so it can also be used for project management. It can be used for publishing. And if you've ever had to send or have received that final version of the document, oh, wait, no, here's one more version. I'm so sorry, use this one. Then you can imagine the value of streamlined version control and sharing. And so the value of this tool is made even greater because with people, we see that we have these community norms around using GitHub. And some examples of that include a README file. So this can help onboard new people to your team or people who are unfamiliar with your work. You might describe what you're doing, how the data looks, and you'll even be able to share a live and updatable URL with collaborators. And so when we use these norms and when they become common practice, they can elevate your team's ability to work together and to share challenges and new developments and solutions. And so I'll just briefly for a bit of time talk about one more, which is Quarto and R Markdown, where we're able to bring together our analysis, our figures, and our text in one place. And so what's amazing about Quarto and R Markdown is that you can then render and share your output as a PDF, as a URL, or as a Word document for easier sharing. And so this is all supplemented by the community expectation of sharing our work while it's in progress, hoping to automate our reporting and share documentation. And all of this makes iteration and reproducibility and communication easier for everyone. And so this opens the door for expanding our tooling and analysis in the next loop. And so on this slide is an overview of some of the key concepts that we're going to spend a little bit of time on. And I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in with the first, which is that data science as a discipline. I'll scroll down just a little. And so data science is the discipline of turning raw data into understanding. And so regardless of your study system or your question, there are clear steps that we can take to make our data science more efficient. And so here we see the steps outlined as importing the data, tidying the data, wrangling the data, and then taking the time to transform, visualize, model, to understand our data, and then finally to communicate our data. And when we're stuck, it's important part of the Openscapes mindset to ask ourselves this question: is my question about the data or is my question about the research? For example, if I'm stuck because I can't interpret how far my species is migrating, is that why I'm stuck? Or am I stuck because I can't subset my data to visualize the answer to my question? One is about my research and the other is about my data processing. And being able to decouple our research questions from data questions means we can get help sooner and more efficiently. And decoupling that in our minds also can take away some of the mental load and burden of combining those questions together. And so in alignment with our principle of reuse, here I want to highlight that there are incredible open data science tools that exist aligned with this theory already for the different steps of data analysis. And so tooling exists for every step of this conceptual diagram, and you can see some of them here. And so here are some of the examples of packages that you and your team can learn, explore, and integrate together. And so open science as a way to work. We're going to talk a lot about how this benefits your work. I don't think you would be here if you didn't think there was a benefit to your work. But to highlight that even further, open science has the daily benefit of producing work that is more efficient and more streamlined. And when you hear open, you may be nervous and think that I am not ready to share everything that I do with the public or with everyone. And that's not necessarily what we mean. You can be open with yourself and you can be open with your team. And doing that alone is a step in the right direction. And we're also trying to move away from this idea that open only exists at the output point. It only exists when you're sharing the data at a publication. And really, open is a part of the process every single step of the way, and wanting to reuse and leverage those existing resources versus recreating what might already exist. And as we mentioned previously, this makes the onboarding process easier. It makes the offboarding process easier. And we're creating an external memory for this documentation so that it doesn't become a hidden curriculum of our jobs or interactions for people to understand, putting it out there for people to really engage with and create a more level space for a team. And lastly, these 2 points of knowing that open work requires trust, requires safety, validating questions, validating where people are coming from will be crucial for building that trust and safety, and that open as a spectrum. So whether it's sharing your ideas, your slides, your tweets, a little bit of the what or who and how are you going to do it with Google Drive? Who are you going to do it with? Yourself, your research group? These are all some of the ways that open can occur in your workflow. And the goal here is to just keep pushing to weave it into your work where you can, so it's easier to share when you need to. And so your research group as a team will be spending a lot of time together in your teams. You signed up for this as a team. And so thinking about specifically the common pieces that unite you all versus setting you all apart, thinking about horizontal leadership and resilience and wanting to build a more resilient team. When only one person holds all the information, when only one person knows how to do one thing or the other, then you're not a resilient team. If that person's on vacation or isn't able to do that work, then we've lost knowledge in this process. And it's also very lonely to be doing that alone. And so thinking about less reinventing, more sharing, more collaboration, all of this leads to less loneliness and less individual burden. And so to that point, onboarding and documenting will be key. Thinking about how this can be a habit that you build with your team, with yourself, how to share and write down that important information so that it doesn't only exist in your head or only exist in an email. Have it be in a place where everyone can access it, and it creates a more united team. And lastly, this all relates to our principles of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. It's not about what you already bring to the team. And we're rejecting this notion that what you bring to the team is what you have to offer, and that's it. This is a place where we're all starting to learn and to teach and to grow together. And we're co-creating a space to do that. And so when we bring this Openscapes mindset to team environments and don't expect people to come already knowing, then we create a more equitable playing field for everyone to be a part of these conversations and to help push the team forward. And so to touch on this final point of what do our workflows have in common and how can we learn from each other? And lastly, just to touch just a little bit on these collaborators and community, all of which are, anyone can be our collaborator, anyone can be our community, and really focusing on learning from, with, and for others. This is a shift that I've even made myself. I used to call it self-taught, really thinking about community taught and how all of what I've learned has been a reflection of people who've been willing to share their knowledge and information with me. And that's the case even when it was just me tapping away at a swirl tutorial by myself. It wouldn't exist without people having an open mindset to share. And then lastly, thinking about how we can share and engage using tools like X or social media or blogs or forum. And then also thinking about communities that exist virtually that are incredible to be a part of and engage with regardless of where you're starting now. So we have a few of those in this corner. And the final point being engage in what feels right, but ultimately know that you are not alone. And so with that, we will transition into some brief silent journaling with what we've got some time for, and then we'll take some questions and conversation as we've got the time. So thank you, everyone.